Show your mastery in the blockchain game show, yo.
See Nickx in the house, strategy on the go.
Yo, pump the channel, spread the Soccerverse love. Hit the bell, push subscribe, and enjoy the show. Making the transitions break. Hit the bell, push subscribe, and enjoy the show.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, so I'll kind of give just a really high-level overview, obviously, of the session. Again, I think kind of few minutes we'll kind of just slowly get started. But I suppose, again, just for maybe some people who haven't joined before, because we had an AMA. This is our second one, so we had AMA previously. We'll do a quick intro again of the three of us. So I'll quickly jump in. So I'm Leslie, so I'm marketing lead at Soccerverse. So covering all the marketing activations, initiatives. Again, I've been here since July last year, so not too long, but again, been here obviously planning for the launch, which has been really successful. So that's me, and I'll pass over to Andy G.
So I'm one of the developers on the game, of course. I've been doing it for quite a few years now, since the beginning actually. And I'll pass you over to Snailbane.
Hello, I'm one of the founders as well. Been working on Soccerverse for like 5 years, maybe, or 6 years, but obviously at the start it was not as full on as what it is now. And I'm from more the blockchainy side as well. That's me.
Nice. Okay, cool. Like I said, did a quick round of intros. So I think obviously, the games have just played on this game week, which has been really exciting. So again, just to bring back to the fore how the excitement and kind of the positivity that obviously the game rounds kind of bring into it. So again, appreciate all your support, and again, hopefully you're enjoying the game as much as we are. So that's been really positive. But without further ado, though, let's get into things, really. So, again, this session will be, or at least for the next probably 10 to 15 minutes or so, we'll just go through the economy and kind of the ecosystem just straight up. And then we'll probably roll into the AMA question session straight after that. So, if I can share my screen. A second. Cool. Can everyone see that? Well, I suppose just small, yeah. Cool. Right, over to you, Andy.
Yeah, sure. Your screen's very small, unless small for me. I don't know if you can see it better. I can't even read it.
We'll click it. See if that makes it go on your screen.
Oh,
yeah. Okay, nice.
Everyone's got to click it if you want to see it.
Yeah, these more reference points anyway, but yeah, go on, Andy.
Yeah, okay. I won't be too long with this, and I'm sure a lot of people probably know a lot of this, but there might be a few things in there before we move on to the AMA. Okay, so, I mean, you could say like a lot of the game is real life, predicting the real life football players, who do you think's on the up and down and who's doing well. And it's an important part of the game, that. And linking the real life performance football players with their in-game ratings is kind of like the core of the game, or one of the cores of the game. So there's a tag that says knowing your football is like helps you win the game more. The biggest rewards will come from scouting youngsters before they become known future stars, and then correctly predicting current stars who might have an extended career. So a player who might play until he's 38 or 40 would obviously continue paying out SVC to you longer than someone who retires early. So that would be a good buy, but I mean, that's probably hard to predict when they're young how long they're going to play for, but that's that. Next slide, please. And then, apart from then, once you deciding what players are on the up and down, in order to sort of like get the best out of that, you've got to socially interact with other people, so your focus goes within the game. And then, so you trying to effectively, what you could say is getting the right player to the right club, which could mean different things. Is your player playing regularly, then you might want to move him from that club if you've got influence in a player. If you're the manager and you've got the players at the club, and you might want to sell a player or buy a better player. So that's all about transfer market. Is a big part of the game, as you all will know. And trying to maximise your SVC payouts is part of making sure the right player is at the right club. Next slide, please. One thing there is that contract negotiations is a big part that you'll eventually, the agents, when more of those become available in the game, as more people get SVC, more people will be able to do the contract negotiations part of it in the transfer market, how many years you want and so forth. Okay, yeah, next slide. Okay, so we're just going to go through the economy. So there's different ways of looking at the economy, but one way might help explain it is three different viewpoints. One viewpoint is the club's income. So looking at how the club's income, where it comes from, is one view of looking at the economy. Might be the simplest way of looking at it. So there's three ways that money can go into a club. First one is the match day income. The second one is the prize money that will come at the end of the seasons, or cup prize money, which is just before the end of the seasons usually. And then the third one is cash injections, which we haven't yet turned on. Okay, we'll go through each of those now. Next slide, please. Okay, quite a bit there, but I think everybody probably understands the match day income, but there may be questions on how it goes up and down and how certain things affect it, which I'm happy to answer if there's questions on that later. And we will be releasing that details, a lot more, the precise details of that at some point soon as well. So basically, the economy, a normal season is the amount of, how we work it out is the amount of money that goes out of a league, which is mainly through wages, player wages. What we did, we calculated how much wage goes out of a season for each league, and then what we did, that works out how much the income needs to go into the league in a season through TV revenue and fans turning up, the tickets, and we're keeping that in balance. So every season that passes, if there's no transfer deals done and players didn't get old and retire and new players come, it was all static, and we just played 20 seasons, the idea is the amount of money going out in wages would be the same amount going in every season. So there's no inflation, that's the idea. Now it's not that static, it moves a bit because people will manage the players differently. Some will shrink the squad so they'll be making more money and so forth. But the idea, it's like a bit of an elastic band, and the income of the league each season generally matches the outgoing. So it's trying to keep it in balance. That said, we do intentionally put 5% inflation on the income going in, just to make it a little bit more fun and give clubs a bit more bandwidth. So that's how it works on a normal season basis. And next slide, please. And then we've got club prize money. So at the end of the season, the second source of income for a club is the prize money that gets awarded, and depending on what division your club is in, and even what country your club is in, the prize money will be different, as is the other income, TV money and ticket price. But the prize money will depend on where you end in the league. So if you ended up top of the English Division 1 league, you will get probably the most prize money in a league that anybody else could get. And if you ended up in some of the other leagues, it's less. So that's how it works. So now this money is all inflationary. So this is all inflationary. Now all the inflationary money in the clubs, there's only one thing clubs can ultimately spend the money on, which is players and the transfer market. So that's what it's for. So if we doubled the amount of prize money, for example, what we'd really be doing is doubling the price of all the players in the game world, because that's all, what would just be twice as much money buying the same players. So the cost of the players would double. And if we made the prize money 10 times bigger for whatever reason, what we'd be doing is just making the price, ultimately, all things being equal, the price of the players 10 times more. So we've got a number which we think's about right, and it's kind of to the value of the players where they are, to try and keep that the same. So because players always retire and new players always get added to the game, this is what this money would go to. Money gets burnt when it goes on the free market, so it ultimately gets burnt out, and there's a 5% fee on every transfer deal, which you'll have noticed. The money does eventually burn out, this inflationary money, so again it balances out. So that's how that works. Again, so there is inflationary, but it also ultimately gets burnt because it just all gets spent on the transfer market, players moving about, and the quantity sets the price of the players. Next slide, please. Okay, so the last one. So this might be a bit new to people. So as you will know, there's SVC payouts for all club influence holders and also player influence holders. And that is linked directly to the club's income for the club influence holders, and the players, it will be based on their wage, and the wage is linked to the rating, which is linked to the real life performance. So the two different ways of playing the game in that respect, but there's SVC payouts. And again, this is from the money that's coming from the clubs. It does come out of the club's balance, but there is inflation built into the club's balance, like I said earlier, which effectively goes to users playing the game. So that this is the only way. This is how it comes out of the clubs and out of the game into users' accounts. So it's kind of inflationary. We think this would be inflationary. So but however, there is a fixed amount of it. The potential maximum amount of SVC in a season is fixed, and I'm not sure what the exact figure is. It might be something like, at the moment, 600 million, but we may change that. Now that is fixed each season, effectively, because people have got hold of that, real people. You can buy player influence, which would then make you pay you out more SVC, which then you could buy more player influence. So you could do that. You could buy other club influence off other people. However, it does need to burn out as well to make the whole economy system work correctly. So what we will enable at some point in the future, but we haven't yet, is you'll be able to inject SVC into your clubs. So that will be the reason why, if you wanted, for example, down near the bottom, Jack Walker's scenario, if anyone remembers him, it was a guy in the 1990s who bought Blackburn Rovers, and he then put loads of personal money, millions and millions and millions of pounds into Blackburn Rovers, bought all the best players. Blackburn won the English League, and he had all the best players for a bit, and then he left the club, and I think he passed away actually, and then the club sort of went back to how it used to be. So people eventually will be able to do that, play the game like that. So it would create a demand for SVC, whereas holding all the influence in clubs and players and will create the SVC to fill that demand. So that's a mechanic that will come out there, and it will keep the whole game economy circular. So it will like growing. Some people will be growing wheat in fields, and then they'll be selling it to like in real life, people eat the wheat, consume it. So it'd be something like that. But everybody playing manager games usually wants more cash in their clubs to buy better players. That's kind of a mechanic that will turn on, and we can explain maybe that in the future when we look to do how we're going to do that and do it in a fair way and so on. But we're not turning that on just yet. And next slide, please. Okay, supply and demand. So yeah, just basically what I was saying there. There's a demand for SVC for a few reasons. One will eventually be to put it into clubs to buy better players, which of course it will get burnt. So all that SVC that's getting paid out to people from the club influence holders and the player influence, so all that access that's getting created every season, it can get burnt away by making its way into clubs and then getting burnt away on the transfer market. So that's what's going on there. And we've done a lot of work trying to get the whole economy balanced so it's sustainable for the long term. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, some tips. You may know these, but by playing the game, I'm sure you know that if your club is higher up the divisions your club is, and I'll give you a tip that's not on the slides in a minute as well, But yeah, managers, if you're playing a manager, your SVC wage is higher the higher up a division you are. An agent, your payout is based on the player's wage. So two straightforward ones there. Club influence holders, you'll maximise your SVC payouts if the club is in a higher division and ends the season as high in the league as possible. That's basically will be based upon, you will get extra fans attending your games the higher in the league you are as you're playing through the season as well. That kicks in 6 games into the season, which we haven't seen yet. The more fans turn up. So if you were top of your league, you get up to 30% more fans turning up than if you're in the middle of the league. So, and it reverses if you're down at the bottom. Like in real life, more people will turn up if you've been successful week in, week out. Your fan base will be filling out your stadium, but your stadium will cap out. So it doesn't mean that all them people will turn up because they might not fit in. But the big one really there is the payout at the end of the season for the prize money. If you win a cup of a shield, you get prize money. So you might decide to go and try and win the cup, but that requires more fitness for your players getting used up and so on. Don't go in debt. Club influence holders do not get paid out if that club is in debt. So that's incentivise people to keep the club finances in good shape. And buying and selling players at the right time on the transfer market will help the club influence holders indirectly, because a better squad ultimately means that you will do better in the league, of course. And the last one is keep your players happy and on the right contracts, because if the agents aren't happy and the player influencers aren't happy, then they can make your player unhappy and his performance will be worse on the pitch. So try to keep your players happy and the influence holders of the players at your club happy. And then if you're a player influence holder, you'll maximise your SVC payouts if the player is playing regularly. So you do, as you'll notice, the SVC payout is each game week from his wage. But if he plays, there's the playing bonus, and he scores or does an assist, or if he's a defender or midfielder, then he will also get a clean sheet bonus. So you want your players playing really. So if you hold influence in a player and he's not playing regularly at the club he's at, you're not getting as much SVC as you could. So you need to appoint an agent and get the agent to go and talk to the manager and say, why aren't you playing me? If you don't play me, I'm going to make him unhappy and I won't renew his contract. I'm going to move club. So these player influence holders versus club influence holders dynamics will kick in, and that's to help people to maximise their SVCs. And also, if the club ends up higher in the league, because the league payouts, bonus payouts at the end of the season, some of it also goes to each player in the club. So the higher the club ends up, the more that will be for each player at the club. And if your club that the player is at wins a cup of a shield, again, it's the same thing. There'll be some payouts. So if you've got a player at a club who's just won the cup, you'll get some payouts. So it all comes back down to you want your player to be at the right club. What's the right club for your player influence? And then players' rating goes up as the wage on a new contract will eventually follow up. So if a player rating goes up in the game, we update the player ratings at the end of the season. When the contract ultimately gets renewed, that means that he'll come on a new wage that reflects that new rating. So that's another thing, is to negotiate a new contract. If you've got an 80 rated player on his contract, he goes up to 88 rated and he's still on a 3-year contract, you need to talk to the manager and say, we want a new contract and our wage going up, because then the player influence payouts will follow up to get part of the wage. Okay, and next slide please. Okay, economy roadmaps. This is the last slide. Some things you may or may not know, but it will be doing. So the game as it is at the moment is in like the first state, the first era, and we will move into another phase. We're going to evolve the game and it'll end into its wouldn't say it was his end state from economy point of view, but another state where we're going to end up at some point in the future at the end of the season. And okay, so the economy and the user payouts will be tuned up to the correct numbers. So we're quite happy with the SVC payout numbers from the player influence and the club influence. However, we do have the ability to adjust them, and we will do, and we'll do it to get the correct numbers if they need adjusting. So we do have the ability to do that, and they might be adjusted up, for example. But we will look at that as the season progresses and make sure that we ultimately have the game paying out the correct SVC and the economy is all balanced. And the Soccerverse team, we do have the ability to change certain game parameters without doing a fork, such as inflation, payouts, prize money amounts, and other things. But once we're happy that all these numbers are balanced and correct, and the game's working correctly with the correct numbers, we'll give up this control. I believe we burn the keys or something, and so it's immutable and we can't change it. So the game's becomes that state. And clubs will eventually be able to raise SVC into the clubs, and as I mentioned earlier, that's not on yet, but we will eventually. And they'll do like an auction system where the clubs can create influence and sell it, and do a raise, and then people can buy the influence from the clubs, and the SVC goes into the clubs, and that's a fair way of doing it, so people can buy into the clubs. It's a way of clubs raising money to buy players on the transfer market, and that will create a demand for SVC. And another thing we're planning to do is the restrictions on the transfer market. We do have the ability, but in an ideal world, we wouldn't have restrictions on the transfer market because everybody would play fair, so to speak, and we wouldn't have price caps. But so once the more people who play the game and the more it fills up, the more it hardens up, the more clubs are managed by collections of influence holders, the more we could look into loosening and up the transfer market and taking more restrictions off. That's what we'd like to do. And two final things is we're going to open source all the code for the back end game, so it'll be fully open sourced, available for anyone to look at it all and make sure it's all fair and transparent. We've not done that yet, of course, but we shall at some point. And then also we'll make some easy instructions. People can set up nodes so they can run their own version of the game. And in terms of that makes it so people could trust us. If you don't trust us, you could run your own node, and Snailbrain could explain more on that. It's more of the Bitcoin ethos. And the final point is the game is fully on chain, if you didn't already know that. So it shows that the game is kind of like, we can't turn it off. So we can't not only can we not take your influence off you and all your other digital assets, we can't actually, we can't turn the game off. We can't take the game away from you, and we're open sourcing it, letting you run your own nodes. So, we help making it more resilient, and all the time that you are spending in there is not going to be wasted because we decide to turn it off because we can't. And that's all for myself, and I've gone on a bit there, but if you want to add anything, Snailbird?
Not from me. I think you covered everything really good there.